Now, I'm usually a fan of what I would classify as 1 year prove it type of deals, where you've got a player that you bring in for 1 year to see what he can do. It's something that can be mutually beneficial to both parties. It's a 1 year trial run for the team to see if they like the guy, to see if they want to commit to him later long term. For the player, it's a chance to prove himself, maybe in some cases prove himself again for 1 year, and then be able to go out there and get himself paid. And these situations, I think, usually work out well because, from a team standpoint, especially, you bring in this guy on a 1 year prove it type of deal. Usually, the best years from guys a lot of times are in contract years, especially when they're not megastars. The reason being is they're going to make sure they take care of their asses in the offseason. They're going to work hard because they're trying to get themselves paid. They're trying to set themselves up for their next big payday. So you usually assume that you're going to get that best that player has to offer in that 1 year. All the while in that prove it deal, you're not usually spending a ton of money in the grand scheme of things. So you're not out of pocket a lot, whereas you could actually justify that short-term investment because the returns could far out exceed that initial investment. But also, if it doesn't pan out and it doesn't work well and something goes wrong, you're only committed to it for 1 year, and while you might feel like you wasted some money, you didn't waste as much money nearly as you could have, and you could quickly move on from it. That's why, especially from team standpoints, I love the 1 year prove it type of deals, but also from a player standpoint too, again, because they get a chance to prove themselves, get a chance to show they can be on their best behavior, get the chance to get themselves paid long term, give themselves flexibility, and give themselves options. So usually, again, I'm a big fan of these type of deals. But every once in a while, I do find those 1 year prove it deals where I just sit there and scratch my head because I don't like it for either party involved. And once again, in this offseason, I come back to the Sacramento Kings. In a season full of what the fuck moments, they give us another one. Now, this isn't a surprise. A lot of us knew this was coming, but the Sacramento Kings have decided to give Rajon Rondo indeed that 1 year prove it deal worth $9.5 million. Now, you would sit there and say, look, this is a Rajon Rondo that could bring championship experience to the table. This is a guy in Rajon Rondo that could potentially impact multiple areas of the game. This is a point guard that's been around the league a long time. He's not going to be a guy that jacks up 25, 30 shots a game. This is a guy that can facilitate and create opportunities for others. This is a guy that maybe, while not the defender that a lot of people think him to be, can still at least defend somewhat at an NBA level. He's a guy that can rebound. He's a guy that can do some things. So you bring in this type of guy into a rebuilding, hopefully, situation like Sacramento, and you think at least short term that you're bringing somebody in, and it's a statement to and away for an organization, you would think, because Rondo's a guy with a name, and he ultimately took Sacramento's money, and a place like Sacramento is going to always be, especially with this situation and circumstance that their organization has put themselves in, going to be a hard place to attract big-time free agents. So bringing in a guy like Rondo, you would think, would help a lot of different areas. But I hate this move for the Sacramento Kings. It's just stupid on so many different levels. Number one, from a front office standpoint, you needed a point guard. You had to have a point guard. So why not sit there and draft Emmanuel Mudiay, number 6 overall, who's a decade younger than Rajon Rondo? If Rondo comes in and has a great season, then he has a great season, but this is a guy that's already, 29 years of age. And he is who he is, and he's not going to get any better. We know by now he's a point guard that can't shoot, which is a major problem when you have a situation like Sacramento where you need a guy that can space the floor for DeMarcus Cousins and be a ball handler for DeMarcus Cousins and create opportunities for DeMarcus Cousins. Well, now on offense, Rondo creates significant problems because if you're a team that likes to run pick and roll like most NBA teams do, part of the reason for running the pick and roll is to stretch out an opposing team's post defense. Well, when you don't have to honor Rajon Rondo's jump shot, players can either go underneath the screen or they can not honor it at all and force Rondo to shoot. And then you're still not spacing the damn floor. When Cousins is posted up, it's not like you can send Rondo out to the corner or out to the freaking elbow to hit the jump shot because he can't fucking shoot. At least with a Mudiay, you look at the mechanics of his jump shot, they're not that bad. He's only 19 years of age. We've seen plenty of examples of guys who come into the league whose jump shots aren't all that good, and through work and practice, they become better at it. and to become guys that can shoot at least the mid-range jump shot, if not the three ball. I'd rather gamble on Emmanuel Mudiay's upside at 19 years of age, mind you, for a longer period for far less money per season than what I would have to give a Rajon Rondo for 1 year to do what I already know he's going to do, which is be a bad offensive fit on the floor for the Sacramento Kings. And all the while, not being nearly the defender that many people make him out to be or believe him to be, and frankly, he hasn't been for a few years. And then furthermore, on top of this doesn't make sense from a basketball standpoint because you've got a team that's hired a win-now coach in George Karl in a total rebuild situation in Sacramento. Now you take into account that George Karl doesn't like DeMarcus Cousins and is trying to get rid of him because he thinks DeMarcus Cousins is a head case. Now you're bringing in fucking Rajon Rondo, a guy that was so bad for Dallas that they created a bullshit injury as an excuse to not play him in the playoffs against Houston. They manufactured an injury so that way they could sit the guy that was their big deal during the season in trade so that way he couldn't play. They created a bullshit injury so he didn't have to see the floor in the playoffs. And now the Sacramento Kings want to bring him into this rebuilding situation where because they have somebody like George Karl as a win-now coach, they're going to try and foolishly win now. It's just fucking ridiculous. And furthermore, when we look at it from a fit standpoint, part of the reason that Rondo didn't work well in Dallas at all is because for a team like Dallas that wanted to get up and down the floor and run, Rondo is the epitome of an Eastern Conference, slow it down, half-court point guard. And now you get to a situation like in Sacramento where you have a head coach like George Karl who has always wanted to run with his teams. He does not like to play in the half court. He prefers his teams to get up and down as much as possible and play a more open, free-flowing style. Now you bring in the point guard that is the exact antithesis of the type of point guard you would want to run that freaking system. It just makes no sense. Short-term deal or not. Because now if a Rondo comes in and somehow magically plays well for one season, now you're looking at a Kings team that's going to be committing multiple years and many millions of dollars to a guy that won't get nearly the same types of offers as he would with other places in free agency. But since you're Sacramento, you're going to have to overpay and over to keep him. You're going to be committing it to a guy who for the majority of that next long-term contract would be in his damn 30s. And all the while a bad systematic fit to play alongside DeMarcus Cousins and play in George Karl's system. It's one thing to make mistakes. It's another thing to continue to make the same mistakes over and over again and not learn from them. Then it's another thing to go and make a whole entirely different type of stupid mistake that everybody else except you seems to understand is a complete fucking mistake. George Karl thinks DeMarcus Cousins is a head case. Well, what the fuck is Rajon Rondo? And all the while, you passed up on Mudiay. You passed up on a guy like Justice Winslow in the draft. You know, a point guard with a ton of upside at 19 years of age who maybe could develop into a floor spacer, or an athletic, multi-positional defending wing that has the ability to stretch the floor as a shooter and as a spacer like a Justice Winslow. To draft a one-dimensional center in Willie Cauley-Stein who's not going to space the floor for DeMarcus Cousins at all, even though in some ways he's a fit to play next to DeMarcus Cousins, just so that way you could bring in a freaking non-floor spacing point guard that teams don't have to respect in a pick-and-roll situation. That will not open up things for DeMarcus Cousins. He'll make things worse. In a season full of stupidity for the Sacramento Kings, the hits just keep on rolling. Rajon Rondo. Rajon Rondo!